Hi everyone, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Now today's video for our Coffee and Crochet with Sarah, I had a question about, so you used a green screen last week, so is your yarn on your back wall not real? Well, as you can see, it is real. And this is my green screen. And Rosie's a little afraid of it. That's why she jumped off the chair. Anyway, so I thought I would show that to you real quick before we get started. My yarn is real. Yes, I have a yarn addiction habit. Come on, Rosie. Come back and sit with Mama. Come on. All right, she's going to go sit with Bubba's. So anyway, welcome to Coffee and Crochet with Sarah, and I'm so glad you're all here today. I can already see you all popping in over here on my comments, and I'm so glad you're here. It's been a super weird weather week for us this week. We had snow, we had sunshine, we had rain, we had clouds, and then on was it Sunday or Saturday, we had the Thunderbirds, which are the airplanes from the Air Force, fly over our town. Now it was raining and pouring, and so we couldn't see them clearly, but we could hear them. But our news station had it live, and it was just amazing. And of course, it's important to us because my husband is retired from the Air Force. It's been a lot of years since then. So anyway, that was lots of fun. And I know that we're all still, struggling a little bit with what's going on in the world. And remember, at the beginning of the year, before any of this started, I said that my word for the year was joy. And it hasn't always been easy, but I've been trying really hard to find something joyful in every day. Well, what we're going to do today, first of all, someone reminded me we forgot to clink in last video. So I've got my I Woof You cup. Clink in, my friends. I'm going to take a little sip. Drinking my good old Folgers coffee. No peppermint or chocolate today, just regular old coffee. Well, I see so many of you clinking in, and I'm so glad to see all of you. Something that I wanted to mention, so many of you have been posting in our group, and I just absolutely love that. And if you want to be a part of our crochet group on Facebook, it's PPD, Puppy Love Crochet Group. And something that I really noticed, because I've had a little bit more time to be able to really look at your posts and the pictures that you're posting. And I appreciate so much those of you who jump right on some of those patterns, get them done, post pictures. But the thing that I've been noticing is that how encouraging you are to each other. That means the world to me, because that's what our group is all about, is posting, whether it's not perfect or not. We don't care about that. What we care about is posting your pictures and encouraging each other, especially right now. And that just really, does my heart good to see you all encouraging each other. It's crochet can be a complicated thing. And I love how you're just whipping out those new patterns. I posted one of our patterns yesterday for our washcloth of the month, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. And some of you already posted some pictures and just such encouraging comments to each other. All right, so what we're going to do is, because a lot of people are picking up crochet again because they have a lot more time, I'm getting a lot more questions. And so it was kind of funny. I was having this email conversation with this woman. She is a teacher, and she is using my Back to Crochet Basics 12 lesson plans with some of her art students just to get them and keep their hands busy and just to have some fun and learn something new. And of course, crochet is an art. Well, we were talking back and forth, and she was telling me some of the questions that our students are asking, and I have to read this to you. I was laughing so hard; it was so funny because it's stuff we take for granted, but you don't think about unless you're learning. Okay, so this is what she wrote to me. She said, "These are the questions that I'm getting. Laugh out loud. Why is it called a stitch if you're not sewing? What's a loop? How about what's a wrap?" You know, teenagers think of wrap as something else, right? Okay, and then one of them she said is a skip. How do I skip? And then, of course, what's a space? And she thought it was so funny. And, these are things we take for granted. We've been doing crochet for a while. Even if you've been doing crochet for a couple of months, you already understand, no, we're not sewing. A stitch is what we call a crochet stitch. A loop is the loop. Anytime you make a loop, it's a loop, whether it's crochet or not. The space is made by skipping. What's a skip? You skip a stitch, So what's a stitch if it's, she was cracking me up, and it just did my heart good to read those emails from her. Thank you, Denise, for emailing me and telling me about your students and all of that. But it got me thinking. There are lots of questions that I've been getting myself besides this, and so I thought I would answer some of those questions, and I've got 5. I narrowed it down to 5. You would not believe some of the questions have been these that she was getting as well. Okay, and so the first question I wanted to answer is, do I have to count my stitches? You don't have to, but you might not get the right amount if you don't count. Because in crochet, we can accidentally add or subtract a stitch or two. And if you do, I'll say you're stitching, rows of double crochet or single crochet or something, those are easy to fix on the ends and make it look good. But if you're doing a complicated pattern and you're not counting your stitches, you could be off really quickly. When I was first learning to crochet many years ago, I learned the method of measuring, making sure everything measures out. And then when I started doing more complicated stitches, that measurement thing was nice because we need to measure, but it doesn't work when you're doing shell stitches and crocodile stitches and lots of other stitches. It just doesn't work. And so it's really important to count those stitches, especially if you want your ends to be even and your rows to be nice and flat the way they're supposed to, unless they're supposed to curve, of course. Alrighty, so another one that I got is, do I have to roll my yarn up into a ball or into a cake? And no, you don't. If I'm using just a skein of yarn, I'll try to pull from the center, and I probably would do the whole project that way. The only time I actually roll my balls up or my yarn into balls or into a cake of yarn, use my winder, is if I have I've used part of it and it's kind of messy and I don't want it to get knotted up. Or my ends. I'll roll my ends up into balls. I have a big basket over here that I have all my leftover ends where I rolled them up into balls and cakes. And then I grab all of those for smaller projects and they're already rolled. And that's where the next question, of course, that goes along with this, it's part of this question, is do I have to have a yarn bowl? You don't have to. Something that I use, this is, let me show you this. I got this. I actually was doing some stuff with Red Heart, and they sent me some baby yarn to work with. And I made, I think it was the hooded baby blanket. And they sent this with it as a prop. Okay, and it's just a pink tin, and it has things. And I like to use it because I can put several balls of yarn or cake of yarn in it at once. You don't have to go out and buy an expensive yarn bowl. They're super cool, and I have a couple of them that I really like, but I really prefer this particular thing. I probably use it for almost every yarn video or video tutorial that I tutorial tutorial that I use or that I do, because I can put a couple of skeins skeins of yarn flat in there. I can put a cake in there, several cakes of yarn. I can put several balls of yarn. And so I think that kind of thing works great. All right, so the bottom line is you don't have to roll your yarn up into balls or into cakes, but when you have some that's left over, it's always a good idea. And I don't use any sort of a clip or anything. Let me grab one of my quick balls of yarn. You know, I don't use any kind of a clip or anything. What I do is I just roll it up if it's just a small amount, and I'll tuck that end under. And it usually, usually keeps it from, you know, unrolling. A lot of people use a paper clip or something, but I don't. And then I just toss them over into that basket. And then when I want to do a small project, or maybe I want to do a scrap project, all my yarn balls are in one place. Okay? All right, now this next one is, the question is, do I have to use stitch markers? And these are my favorite. They're by Boye, B-O-Y-E. And I got them in a kit. They're like a jelly. You remember the old jelly shoes? They're just like gels. And you don't have to use stitch markers, but they do help in a lot of circumstances. One of my favorite places to use the stitch markers is when I'm doing a really long chain of yarn. I'll mark it off every 10 or 20, depending on how long a chain I'm doing. Or even if I'm doing a foundation row where I'm doing a foundation single, half or double or triple crochet, I'll mark it off every 10 or 20 stitches. That way I don't have to keep going back and recounting those. Another thing I do sometimes is if I'm doing something where I'm decreasing on the edges and I don't want to forget which stitch was that decreased stitch, I might add a stitch marker in there to help me out. And also if I'm just doing rows, and you know, if you're doing rows of double crochet and your first chain 3 counts as your first double crochet, you might want to mark that chain so you don't forget when you turn and you stitch back across that you stitch in that or that chain 3 that counts as your first double crochet. Stitch markers are used a lot more in knitting than they are crochet, but they can be a help to us in crochet. You don't have to use them. It's just a little tool that'll help you out if you want to. All right. Now, the fourth question is, I'm working a pattern. Do I have to use the yarn weight that the pattern calls for? Now, this is kind of a tricky question because first thing I want to tell you is yes, use the yarn weight, because if you use a thicker or thinner yarn, you're going to get different results. But if you want to make it, like, for instance, let me just grab one of these that we did yesterday. This is our washcloth wagon wheel that we did yesterday. Okay, these are all made with number 4 yarns. You can use acrylic or cotton. I prefer cotton for my washcloths and my hot pads and things like that. But if you wanted to make this, say, as a big pot holder, and you wanted to double that, you could. You could double your yarn, hold it together, but you need to go up a hook size, okay? And that's something that you just have to kind of figure out on your own what you want to do. What I suggest is this. When you get a pattern and you're working it, before you make any changes to it, because you know we're artists, we're going to make changes and you know, maybe change the hook size because it's too small or too big or something. Before you do that, work through it a little bit, especially if it's a small project. In crochet, we don't use gauge as much as they do in knitting. Knitting, you always knit you know, a gauge swatch. I don't do that a lot in crochet unless I'm doing a large project. If I'm doing a small project like a washcloth or something, I usually don't. And then I just sort of measure as I go. And remember, I said when I was first learning to crochet, I did the measure as you go method. And that's just measuring, making sure everything is the right size. And measure as you go. Don't do the whole project and then realize that your hat is this big. If you're going along and your hat is coming out too big, then start over and go with a smaller hook. Or if it's too small, you can always go up a hook size. And that's another thing that you can do. Something that people don't realize is that, and you all might, because you know I've probably said it before, is that everybody stitches differently, and even ourselves, sometimes we stitch differently. When I'm watching a movie that's more intense, I might stitch tighter. Or if I'm just listening to some beautiful quiet music, I might just be stitching along and it's calm and relaxing, and I might stitch a little looser. And so you have to keep those things in mind when you're doing a project. So bottom line of that is, and of course, do I have to use the hook that goes with the pattern is our fifth question. And these two kind of go together. And so the bottom line of this is these two last questions. You don't have to use the same color of yarn or even the same brand of yarn or even the same, maybe they're using a solid and you want to use an ombre. You don't have to do that the same. You use your imagination, change your colors up, change colors as often as you want, whatever you want to do with that particular pattern. But when you're first starting out that pattern or whatever pattern that you're working on, my suggestion is this, and of course, it's just my opinion. Use the hook, the crochet hook, and the yarn weight that the pattern is calling for. Test it out a little bit. If the hat's coming out too big, you can always go to a smaller crochet hook. If the blanket the stitches are too open, go to a smaller crochet hook. If they're too tight and you can't get your hook in there, go to a larger crochet hook. But stick with the yarn weight. And then if you decide maybe you want it to be thicker or bigger, you can always go up to a larger crochet weight, like maybe it's a 4, but you want to go up to a 5, and make sure you adjust your hook as well. All right. And one other thing to remember is when you purchase yarn, on that yarn label, it's going to give you the weight of the yarn and it's going to give you a suggested hook. It's a suggestion. I've had people send me messages, well, my yarn says to use a 5 and you're using an I, which is a 5.5. And I'll tell them yes, and that's because I want it to be a little more open. If you're stitching something that's lacy and open, you might use a larger hook because you want it to drape or lay big, flow better or something like that. So remember when you're purchasing yarn and there is a crochet hook on there, a crochet suggested size, it's okay if you change that. It's just a suggestion of what they suggest you use with this particular yarn. Some yarns that's a boucle, I like to use a larger hook because, like even with some of the scrubby yarns, I might go with a little larger hook than suggested because I want it to be a little looser and I want to be able to get my hook in there. Okay, so those are our 5 questions. You don't have to count your stitches, but it's a very good idea. You don't have to roll your yarn in a ball or a cake. It's kind of up to you and what you want to do. You don't have to use stitch markers, but they are a great tool to help you out. And yes, I would stick with the weight of the yarn that the pattern's calling for. And yes, I would stick with the hook unless you feel you want to make some changes. All right, and so I got probably 100 questions in the last 2 weeks, and I'm still going through some of those emails trying to answer some of those questions. So I hope this helped you out a little bit. And I will tell you that if you want a refresher course or just go through the Back to Crochet Basics, maybe just to remember certain things, it's a really super beginner course. And you can find it on YouTube in my playlist. You can also find it on my blog. Let's see, I'm pretty sure I put it on Ravelry. I can't remember if I did or not. But anyway, what it is it's 12 lessons. And each lesson at the beginning will have just a little bit of a lesson on the blog. And then I will have you do a simple project to practice what we learned in the lesson. And I think most of the videos maybe are 15 to 20 minutes long. They're not real long. And I did this because I had a lot of people asking me a lot of beginner questions. And I thought this would be really great. And it's been really used like this Denise, she's using it with her class online. She's basically having them watch the video and then working with them and helping them with it also herself live. And I think that's really, really cool. I think everyone should crochet. Man, woman, boy, girl, anybody that can hold a hook. I'd have my dogs crochet if they could. It's just one of those things, and it's like any craft or art. When you're going through rough times, if you've got something to concentrate your mind on and also make something fun and creative, it's a win-win, right? All righty. All right. So I want to say hello to everybody and thank you so much for being here today. Just a really nice big crowd. I'm checking to see if there's any questions in here real quick, and then I'm going to show you what's new. Let's see. I noticed a couple of you said clinking in late. That is super duper okay. All you have to do if you want to see the beginning of the video is watch the beginning when we're done. And of course, I always shoot them over on YouTube for my wonderful YouTube friends because I love my Facebook friends and I love my YouTube friends. All right, let's talk about, oh, I was just reading. Lisa Ryan said we had a teach me what you know, and I taught the peeps in my house how to chain. See, that's awesome. That's a neat thing to do. I love that. And once someone starts chaining, because that is the first thing people need to learn when it comes to crochet is how to chain. And once people start doing that, they're like, oh, that was really easy. Teach me something else. I love that. All right, let's talk about what's new this week at Posh Pooch Designs. And so one thing that we did, which I updated this pattern, is our big loopy flower. And I absolutely love these. You can make them in any colors. Here's like an oatmeal color. And these ones here, I'm going to show you over here on my camera so you can see them up close. Let's click over to the top cam. All right, now let's move these out because we're going to talk about those in just a minute. But these are the big loopy flowers, and I just absolutely love these. And it's super easy. They're just chain loops. This would be a good pattern to do if you want to teach someone what else they can do with their chains, because you're just single crocheting, you're increasing every row. In the front loops, you do your loops, and then in the back loops, you do your single crochet rows of increase. And then every row, you're going to do more loops. And you can make this flower bigger and bigger and bigger. These have 3 loops on them. This one has 4 rows. And this is oatmeal yarn that I thought was really cool, and I had that on a hat for a while. And so that's a pattern that we did. It's a free pattern on my blog. You can find it on Ravelry, and you can find it a video on YouTube. And since we're down here at the bottom cam here, or the top cam, I'm going to show you these. This is our washcloth of the month for April. It's called the wagon wheel, and the reason we called it that is it's round, of course. And then we did some front post stitching for the spokes of that wagon wheel, and you can see those. I was when we did the pattern, this one is the one that cracks me up because I intended for this to look like a daisy, but it looks like a fried egg, and I love it. And so you can make them in a solid cotton. You can make them in this yarn, and this is one of those new yarns, Sugar and Cream Scrub Off. And within the yarn, it has cotton. It's all cotton, but it has scrubby yarn cotton, and it goes from solids to variegated, and your cotton will be in variegated, your scrubby will be in solids, and it's really a really cool yarn. This one is called Bubble White. It's just a super cool yarn. And with one of these, I made 2 of our washcloth of the month. And this one started with the scrubby in the center, which I really like. And this one has the cotton in the center. I just wanted you to see how that works up. And this is one of those things where the recommended crochet hook for this is a H, which is a 5mm crochet hook. I did these in an I. And the reason I did that is because of the scrubby yarn that's in there. It's better when stitching with the scrubby yarn if you stitch a little bit looser, and the eye helps you do that. All right. And then this one, I wanted to whip one up in a variegated. This is just Christmas colors, just so that you could see how it looks. The spokes of the wagon wheel do not stand out as much in a variegated. And so that's why I wanted to do these 2. This one looks more like a flower, and of course that one looks like a fried egg. I'm okay with that. I think it's pretty funny. Alrighty, so that's our crochet pattern of the month. And if you don't know what we're doing with that, every month on the 3rd Monday of each month, we're doing a crochet washcloth pattern together. And it was really funny because the first 3 months I did a square washcloth, and I wanted to do something round, and everyone's like, yes, a different shape. Yes, we love it. So, and of course, there's going to be more shapes as well. And the neat thing about these is if you have leftover cotton from other projects, you can always put it together and make some washcloths. And then what you need to do, and this is what I do, is I have a tub and I put them in there. And then when somebody has a birthday, somebody gets married, somebody gets a new house, somebody goes off to college, something like that, you can put 2 or 3 of these together, roll them up, tie it in a bow, and you've got a gift all ready to go. Unless you're kind of like me and you want to use them yourself. Some of them I keep and some of them I put in my gift bucket. All right, so the other thing that we did was our table runner. Isn't this beautiful? Now this one's not real long, and that's because I wanted it for my coffee table, just for the center. Okay? It's lacy and beautiful. And it goes from pink to yellow to orange to green to lavender to pink. And the way the pattern is it's basically a 3-row repeat. And you can make this as long as you want for whatever you're going to put it on. You can make it like really long, put it on the back of your piano or down the center of your dinner table. And the neat thing about this is it's just made with acrylic medium weight number 4 yarn. So you can toss it in the wash machine and wash it. And you can make one for every season. You can do fall colors, Christmas colors, winter colors in blue would be really pretty. And you can, and it's just a medium number 4 weight yarn. You can use ombres. You can even do a solid. It works perfect. And it's one of those patterns that once you start working on it, you can just work on it. You don't even have to look at the pattern and go, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that. It's just a 3, once you set it up, it's a 3-row repeat. And it's, let's see, you can see right here, you're going to do a shell stitch, which is 5 double crochets. Then you'll do the open shell stitch. You can see there's holes in there. And then you'll do V-stitch, and then you'll repeat shell, open shell, V, shell, open shell, V on each row. Once it's set up, you've got 3 double crochets at the beginning and end, so you don't have to add a trim. And then the last row is, of course, a row of double crochets, just so that you have an edge that looks like the beginning. It's just a really super easy pattern, and I just really like it because it's open and lacy, and you can use it for any season. All right, now the last thing I wanted to show you is my basket. Now this is the same pattern as my best bulky basket. The difference is I repeated the single crochet, the cross stitch row, and the single crochet 2 more times. So my basket is really tall. And then I added the single crochet rows in the handle. And I really love this great big basket. Look at this. And so that's a modification on a pattern that you can do. All right, Tammy's asking a question. Does the Walmart in your area where you live have a poor yarn section? The only Walmart in my area has a terrible yarn section. You know, I haven't been to Walmart in 5 weeks, but my Walmart, I think it just gets picked over because in this area, there's not a Walmart like real close. And so I think it just really gets picked over really bad. They almost always have the Red Heart Super Saver, which is fine because I do like that yarn. But as far as like the ombres and the striping yarns, cake yarns, mandala, all those, they're always really, really picked over. And and this Walmart here in Parker, I think it just gets so much traffic that they're just not real good at stocking it, And so I really prefer to go to Hobby Lobby and Michael's and Joann's. But if I have to have something, I would probably pop into my Walmart. Right now, because I'm not going out into the world, my husband's doing all the shopping, I haven't made him look for yarn for me. Although my husband would, if I had a desperate need for some yarn, he would go and get it because he doesn't mind. He's gone with me to Hobby Lobby and Joann's many times, and he has a great eye for color. And I'll be looking for something, And he'll go, oh, look at this one. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'll grab a couple of those, you know. So he does have a good eye for color and a good eye for yarn. And he's wonderful. He is my greatest cheerleader. He helps me set up all my computer stuff, my green screen, you know, all of that stuff. I couldn't do all the stuff without him either, you know. So anyway, my voice is starting to die on me. And so just to recap, that is real yarn. That is a real green screen. And I don't use it that often. It's just kind of fun every now and then because I really prefer my yarn of crochet. My wool of yarn. Okay, now that my voice is dying a little, let me get a little coffee. All right. So I hope that you learned some things. I hope you'll share the free lessons on YouTube with anybody, or maybe watch them yourself. And the last thing I just really want to say is thank you. It means the world to me that when I do these live videos, you come in, you comment, and also that you talk to each other. I love that one because a lot of times I can't catch all of them. And so afterwards, in the afternoon, about 3 o'clock, I like to take what's called a happy nappy, just from 3 to 3:30 if I can just sit for a few minutes. And I'm usually not sleeping. I'm usually reading through the comments. And so I really love it that you all talk to each other, you know, even in these comments, and encourage each other, because that's what art and all of this is all about, right? And so I'm going to let you go. Thank you for being a part of Posh Pooch Designs and my videos. Thank you for being my friends on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, I can't do any of this without you.